Hello there. My name is Billy Angel. I am your storyteller, and I have a great story for today. A few thousand years ago, it was Moses who led the Hebrews out of slavery in Egypt toward the promised land, Canaan. It was a huge fight with Pharaoh to get the Hebrews to come out. Pharaoh wouldn't let them go. No, they were his slave laborers. But heaven performed some amazing miracles. The plagues, they put so much pressure on Pharaoh that in the end, he had to let them go. So the Hebrews packed their bags, their belongings, and all of them, 1,000,000 plus, headed for the desert on their way east to the promised land. But then God spoke to Moses and said, "Go south. I want to speak to the people at Sinai." Well, Sinai is a mountainous area near the country of Gideon, where Moses actually lived for many years. And so they went there, and God spoke to the Hebrews, gave them the 10 commandments. We've all heard of those. 10 basic rules for living. Apart from that, the Hebrews were given lots of other rules, the law, because now they had to learn to live as a people outside of the rule from Egypt. They also had to learn to live in the presence of their God. And there at Sinai, the covenant was established, a contract between the people and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it goes like this. God says, "You serve and love me with all of your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself, and I will look after you. I will protect you. I will provide in every need. I will prosper you." Wow, pretty good deal. And so with the covenant established, the Hebrews set off north and then eventually east to head for the promised land. But then, crossing the desert would take a few weeks. Lots of problems came up. Lots of issues, a lot of learning had to take place. And in the end, the Hebrews spent 40 years in the desert getting ready for the promised land. By that time, Moses was old, elderly, ready to pass on to the afterlife. So Moses appoints a new leader, his second in command, Joshua, and Joshua will take the people into the promised land. And his last days, Moses speaks to the people and reminds them of the covenant. Stay with your God. Love him with all your heart, mind, and soul, and he will look after you. Moses is gone. Joshua is the new leader, and he takes the Hebrews into the promised land. And here they go. They take one city after the next, after the next, after the next. They are so powerful because God is with them. It is an amazing time. The Hebrews take their own land for the first time in their existence, and they call the land Israel. Now, there's a few pockets here and there of indigenous people, Midianites, Amalekites still living there, but those people are willing to serve the Hebrews in their new home country, Israel. And things are good. But here it comes. When Joshua gets old and ready to go to the afterlife, he does not want to appoint another leader. "No," says Joshua, "you don't need a leader. Leaders can do silly things. Leaders can get off the rail. You just stick to the covenant, worship your God, and he will look after you. Make sure you don't mix with the people. You don't get into their idol worship. Stay with the Lord, the God of Moses, and all will be well." And so Joshua is gone. Now, the generation that he grew up with, some of them are still there. People outlive him. They remember the miracles that God performed back in Egypt and in the desert and how they conquered this land. But then comes the time when they are all gone and a new generation grows up. And they were never there. They don't remember those miracles. They didn't experience these. And they begin to slip away from the covenant. They begin to intermarry the indigenous people, and then they begin to worship their idols. They bring into their homes these little statues of wood or stone and start to worship those. They even begin to build these Baal altars and Asherah poles. Now this is serious idolatry. And the God of Moses is not happy. As the people turn their backs on him, he begins to take his protection away from the Hebrews. And all of a sudden, they are very vulnerable. Before you know it, the Amalekites come in, the Midianites, the Philistines, the Amorites, the Jebusites. They send in these raiding parties and they steal the people's cattle. They steal the harvest. They cause huge harm and damage. This is terrible. The people begin to call out to their idols for help. Please, help us. Asherah, help us. No help comes. It just goes from bad to worse. Eventually, the people remember the God of Moses. We must ask him. They call out to God for help. And God hears the cry. He sends a prophet. The prophet says, get rid of your idols, clear your homes, get back to worshiping God, him alone. And then God raises a judge, a person who will be a leader for a time. And this person, a man or a woman, will gather an army, go to battle, clear the country of the enemy. And it'll be a time of prosperity and peace. And this is how it goes. And really, in a few hundred years, this kind of thing is happening over and over and over again. People worship God, everything is good. People slip away from the covenant. They start to get into idol worship. Trouble comes. Things go from bad to worse. People cry out to God for help. Help comes. And finally, the covenant is reestablished. So today's story is about a man called Gideon. Now, he's a farmer, and he lives on his father's farm. Gideon has a family of his own. He has young children. And at the same farm, there are Gideon's brothers and sisters. They have their families. It's a large, extended family, 3 or 4 generations. And they have lots of servants. Big farm. His father is called Joash. Well, the times are not good. The Midianites are all over them. The Amalekites, they come in every other day. They have these raiding parties. They steal the cattle. They steal the sheep, the oxen. They steal the harvest. People are suffering. It is so bad. People are actually hiding in caves and in the woods, in dens. So Gideon is thrashing wheat this afternoon, but he doesn't want to do it in the backyard. If you thrash wheat to get the corn off the plant, you get a big cloud dust, and that could easily be spotted by some Amalekites or some Midianites out there. So Gideon has stepped into the wine press, which is basically a hole in the ground, about 2 yards deep, with a flat floor. No wine there today, just thrashing the wheat. And Gideon is keeping an eye out that no Midianites or Amalekites are spotting him. While Gideon is doing this, the story tells us there appears the angel of the Lord. An impressive figure arrives by the oak tree there in the village of Ophrah and sits down. Gideon. Greetings, you mighty warrior. God is with you. Gideon knows this is no ordinary visitor. This is not someone from the village. This is not someone even from his tribe. This is not the enemy. This is a special visitor. Sir, if God is with me, then why are we having such trouble? The times are really bad. We are being hit so hard by the enemy, sir. The miracles we hear about from our parents and grandparents, the miracles that God performed back in Egypt and in the desert, even when we took this, those seem a long time gone. Sir, it seems as if God has turned his back on us and handed us over to our enemy. Yes, Gideon. Times are bad, but God has heard the people's cry. And I'm sending you, Gideon, to form an army and to beat the enemy. I will give you victory. Sir, I'm a farmer. I know nothing about warfare. My family is the lowest family in our clan. Our clan is the least in our tribe. Nobody's going to listen to me. Could I ask for a sign? Sir, would you give me a sign so I know that you speak with high authority? I just remembered, sir, it is the custom in our tribe that I should prepare you a meal. I would want to offer you a meal on behalf of my family. Would you accept? Of course, Gideon. I accept, and I will wait here. So Gideon disappears in the farm. He gets everybody involved quickly. We got to prepare a meal. I got a very special visitor out there. The angel waits, and while he waits, the angel of the Lord imagines what is to come. He's preparing the way for a miracle. He's preparing the way for victory. Then Gideon arrives. Sir, I've prepared some goat's meat, bread unleavened, and a broth. Please. Thank you, Gideon. Thank you. Would you put the meat and the bread on the rock over there and pour the broth? And so Gideon puts the meat down, the bread, and he pours the broth over the meat and the bread. Now, Gideon, step aside, will you? The angel takes his staff and reaches for the meal and touches it just gently. In that moment, fire flares up from the rock and consumes the entire meal. The next moment, the angel of the Lord disappears. Gone. Gideon stands there in amazement. My God! I think I've just seen the angel of the Lord. Now, there is a saying among the Hebrews, something that Moses has written: no one can see the face of God and live. Gideon thinks he's going to die. But he's not dying. Then, in the next moment, he hears the voice of the angel, even though there is no angel to be seen. And the angel says to Gideon, "Do not be afraid, Gideon. You are not dying, you will not die, you will live to be an older man. I am going to use you, Gideon, to bring victory to the Hebrews. And I shall be their God again, they shall be my people." Wow. Gideon feels like he's all fired up. He feels like there's new life going right through his veins. He feels like, wow, God is here. He's going to do something. He's heard our prayers. He's going to get rid of the Midianites, the Amalekites. We're going to have peace and prosperity again. Do you hear me? Something special is about to happen. Then Gideon decides he wants to bring an offering to the God of Moses. So he asks his father, "Do you remember how to build an altar? You know, the way it's done in the Hebrew way for the God of Moses." And of course, Joash remembers, oh yes, that involves 12 large stones for the 12 tribes of Israel. And so together they build an altar on Joash's land. And then they make a sacrifice. And Gideon calls the altar of peace, because he knows peace is coming back to the land. Thank you, Father. Thank you. That evening when Gideon has gone to his room, ready for rest, the angel speaks to him again. Gideon, I want you to take your dad's bull, the one that is 7 years old. I want you to go to your dad's Baal altar on his land and destroy it. I want you to destroy the Asherah pole that stands next to it, cut it down. I want you to build a proper altar to the Lord, the God of Moses, on the same spot on that hill. And then I want you to sacrifice your dad's bull in my name. Now Gideon realizes that this is very radical action. This is a real step of faith that God is asking him to make. Gideon knows the village will be furious when they find out. I mean, that'll be war with his own village. Even his own family will not be pleased. They would not be in favor. So Gideon figures he best do this at night. So while the evening is still young, he gets up and he calls out 10 servants and he explains to them what they're going to do, but be quiet. And after midnight, they leave the farm quietly. They head for the altar and then they go to work. They wreck the Baal altar. They take it to pieces. They smash it. They pull it apart. They cut down the Asherah pole and cut it down some more and cut it down some more and cut it down some more. Then they bring the bull. In the meantime, they build an altar with the 12 large stones, an altar to the God of Moses. And then they make the sacrifice. And they feed the flames with the wood from the Asherah pole. Wow. And the amazing thing is, none of the family have noticed anything. Nobody in the village has seen any or heard anything. And so the job is done. And then Gideon tells his servants, let's go back. Everybody get back to your bed. Catch a few more hours of sleep before morning is here. But you know what? Gideon writes a note to his father. And he explains in the note what he's done that night. His father needs to know. And he puts the note on the kitchen table. Then he goes to sleep. Well, the morning comes, and the villagers are out and about, and of course, a couple of villagers are heading for the farm, and they find out what's happened that night. They are outraged. How can this be? Look at the mess. And there is a new altar and a fresh sacrifice there to the God of Moses. Well, this is an offense to them. They rush back to the village, tell everybody what's happened. Well, some people have heard that Gideon had a high visitation. So he says, it must be Gideon who's done this. So the whole village comes together and like one big mob, they head for Joash's farm. Joash, bring out your son. He deserves to die. We will kill him. Do you know what he's done? Well, yes, Joash knows what has happened. Hang on, not so fast. Are you trying to defend Baal? Are you trying to do his work for him? You think Baal is going to like that? Your son deserves to die. If we don't kill him quickly, Baal will kill all of us. Hang on now, says Joash. Baal, your God, has power, don't you think? Well, if he has power, he will want to take his own revenge. Of course, he will kill Gideon himself. He would not be pleased if you do it for him. I imagine if Baal is a god of power, he's going to throw down fire from heaven and it'll consume the whole farm. We'll all be dead. But if you are right there, you'll be dead too. Baal might just split the ground open. We all disappear. Well, if you are too close, you'll go down too. All of a sudden, the villagers realize that, wow, this is complicated. This is dangerous. We better keep our distance. So instead of coming for the farm and for the family, they are backing away. They're on their way back to the village. Yeah, maybe he's right. Baal will take his own revenge. You know, he can send snakes to bite this Gideon. He can cause him to fall ill or something. If Baal wants to kill him, he'll be dead in no time. Well, I'll tell you what. Nothing happens. Gideon lives. And Gideon is very alive, more than ever. So his father speaks to him. Well, I saw your note, and I must admit, son, if you had asked me permission to do what you did, I don't think I would have given you my permission. And you know what the village feels. And yet, now that it's done, I think it was a good thing. Yes, I can feel the spell is broken, you know. This idol worship has brought us nothing but misery, you know, hate and fear and anger, all kinds of darkness. And the land is right open to the enemy. Clearly, the God of Moses has left us to it. I think you're right, Gideon. We need to get back to serving God, the God of Moses. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. He performed so many miracles. He looks after us. But then I think the big battle is still to come. And he was right. The big battle was still to come. The enemy decided to pull together their forces. The kings of Midian and Amalek and Philistia and other kings, tribes of the east, they all get together and they decide to put their armies together and form one huge fighting force and take this force to that new horrible country, Israel. And we're going to raid the country. We're going to take their crops, take their animals. We're going to take their women. We're going to kill the men. We're going to raid this place till there is nothing left. And that's what they set out to do. But then, when Gideon hears about this, it says in the scripture that the Spirit of God falls upon him. All of a sudden, it's like he's on fire. He is so fired up. We will form our own army. We will stand against the enemy. We will crush them. God is going to give us victory. So Gideon blows his ram's horn. And the sound can be heard all around, and his whole clan, all the people come to the farm at Ophrah, and Gideon speaks to them. God is going to give us victory. We will form our own army. We will stand against this aggression. Now I want you to go all out over the tribe of Manasseh and all the other tribes and spread the news, send the message. Every man who can fight is to come down, and we gather at the spring of Harod. There we will put together our own army and fight the enemy. Well, the people are all fired up, so they all go and spread the word throughout the whole of the country. And then, when a moment of quietness comes, suddenly Gideon finds himself in some doubt. Oh, man. I mean, he's just a farmer. He knows nothing about warfare. He's never led anything. Oh my God, how do I know for sure that you are going to make all of this happen? I have no idea what to do. Please, God, would you allow me another sign? God says, I will allow you. What is it you want? I will put out this fleece, this sheepskin, at night, and when I come back in the morning, I would ask that the fleece is wet, but the ground is dry, no dew. Yes, Gideon, go ahead. And so Gideon puts out the fleece first thing in the morning. He comes out there, the fleece is soaking wet. The ground absolutely dry. Oh, God is with us. God is going to do this. We will have victory. It is coming together. So that day Gideon sends all of his servants and all of his brothers to the spring of Harod, where they can be part of the army, and he will follow as soon as he can. And yet, that same day, Gideon hits another bump of doubt. Oh, God. Oh, man, he hears news about the army of the enemy. They are huge. There are thousands of them, and they are well trained, they're well equipped, they're experienced. Oh, God. How do I know we're not all going to be massacred? Would you give me just one more sign? God says, yes, Gideon. What will it be? If I put the fleece out at night, would you, for the next morning, keep the fleece dry, have the ground wet by the dew? It'll be done, says God. So Gideon puts the fleece out there. First thing in the morning, he rushes out. The fleece is dry. The ground soaking wet. Gideon, I will give you victory. I am with you, and I will direct you. Follow my commands. Listen to my voice. So Gideon is off to the spring of Harod. There, thousands of men have arrived. There is a tremendous response from all over the country. All these farmers have come and brought their gear, their swords, their daggers, their sticks, everything. Mind you, they are not warriors. They are farmers. And the enemy, have you seen Gideon? Have you seen how large that enemy army is? There must be like 60, 70, maybe 100,000 fighters out there. Never mind, says Gideon. Never mind. God is going to perform a miracle. He has done it in the past. God can do anything. He is going to give us victory. Now be calm and get ready. And then Gideon hears the voice of the Lord. God says, Gideon, too many men out here. I want you to send men home. But Lord, too many. It's not enough men as it is. The enemy army is like 4 times the size of what we have here. Why should I send men home? We need every man we can find. Gideon, I am the Lord God. I don't need any army to defeat the enemy. I can wipe them out like this. Gideon, if you were the only soldier in the Hebrew army, I would give you victory. Gideon, I want the people to understand that I am their God, that they can rely on me. If they think they have taken the victory themselves, if they take all the credit for the victory, they will continue to forget about me, bring in the idols, and you're back in the same trouble that has happened already so many times. The people need to remember the God of Moses, who can perform miracles, who will look after them, and who will provide in every need. Now listen to my voice, Gideon, and obey my command. Tell those men, anyone who still has any fear in his heart, any doubt in his mind, you can go home. Well, when Gideon speaks these words, the whole of the army stands there staring at him. What did he just say? Did we hear that right? Yes, you heard that right. Any fear in your heart, any doubt in your mind, feel free to go home. In fact, I'm sending you home. 22,000 men turn around and begin to make their way home in that hour. Well, you can imagine Gideon's family is distraught. His brothers think he's lost his mind. Gideon, You cannot be doing this. You are throwing your victory away. No, I am doing what the Spirit tells me to do. He will give us victory. And so even his brothers begin to leave and go home. Over to you. Then Gideon hears the voice again. The Lord speaks to him and says, Gideon, still too many men out there. I want you to take the men to the riverside and ask them to drink. And then I will show you who to send home and who can stay here. By now, Gideon is totally focused on just doing what God tells him to do. So he announces, every man down to the riverside, take a drink from the water. And so they do. And interestingly, most of them just get on their knees and drink water straight from the river. But there are a few who don't. They keep their feet on the ground. They go through their knees and scoop the water out of the river and drink from their hands. Then God says, all of those who are on their knees, sent them home. The rest can stay. And I tell you what, in that hour, another over 9,500 men make their way home. Just 300 men stay. And as these large numbers of men are leaving, Gideon tells them, leave your provisions here, your water jars, your ram's horns, anything you brought with you, your swords, we may need them. And then he tells his 300 men, God is going to give us victory. I have no doubt about it. So go to your tents and rest up for a few hours, because the action is coming very soon. And so everyone goes to rest. Gideon takes a little rest. Then the angel speaks to him and says, Gideon, I will give you victory, and the action is just around the corner. Now, if you have any doubt about this mission, I invite you, take your servant and go into the enemy camp, sneak in, take a look around. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to let you overhear a conversation, and you will hear something that will fire you up. You will be so encouraged, you will be eager to attack. So Gideon and his servant crawl into the enemy camp. They take a look. Huge camp, thousands of tents, thousands of camels sleeping there in the hills. These men are ready for a big battle for the next day. And then Gideon hears a voice. There's a soldier in a tent there telling his friend his dream. I saw this barley bread, a huge bread, came tumbling down the hill. And this bread was just heading for our camp, the Midianite camp. And then the bread just struck a tent. It knocked it right over and just crushed it flat. That's my dream. That can only mean one thing, says his friend. The bread is the sword of Gideon. The sword of Gideon, son of Joash. He's going to destroy us all. God has given this whole army into his hands. I know it in my guts. Well, when Gideon hears this, he gestures to his servant, quickly, and they head back to the camp. Wake up! Oh, everybody, wake up, wake up, wake up! This is the moment. We're going to go into action. And Gideon explains he's splitting them up in 3 groups of 100. They're going to approach the enemy camp from 3 different sides. And just after midnight, he will blow the horn. Then everybody's to blow their horns, break their clay pots. Inside the pot will be the torch with a fire. And then they'll all shout for God and for Gideon. And I promise you, heaven will strike this whole camp with panic. And so it happens. The three groups spread around. They travel and move to the edge of the huge enemy camp. And just after midnight, Gideon takes his horn and blows it. To-do, to-do. All 300 men grab their horn and blow it. It's a huge sound that echoes around the hills. Then they all break their clay pots and their torches are full of flames. The fire is everywhere. Then they shout, "A sword for God and for Gideon!" Well, panic strikes the camp. All the soldiers come rushing out of their tents. They got their swords in their hands. They start fighting whoever they come across. They're all fighting each other. They're killing each other. Nobody knows what to do. They're all running around. They're all screaming and fighting and killing. It is panic. Even the animals are running around. Hundreds of them just run over the hills. Half the army gets killed. The other half is disappeared over the hills. The army is gone within an hour. Gideon quickly sends messengers to the men who left for home to turn around and follow those soldiers, go after them and kill them. And within 3 days, the entire enemy army has been annihilated. Some of them disappeared, the rest is dead at the hands of the Hebrews. Peace is back in the land. People come to Gideon and they say, "Gideon, we want you to be our leader." "Well, I'm already your leader for now." No. We want you to be our permanent, our official leader. And then after you, your son will be our leader. And after him, his son, and so on. It sounds like you want me to be your king? King Gideon? Yes, why not? You be our king. No, absolutely not. No way. Imagine if I were to be your king, and then my son, and then his son. Sooner or later, soon enough, one of us is going to be a bad king, a terrible king. Oh yes, I can assure you, there's going to be a king who just can only think of himself, who wants to enrich himself, who's going to tax you to the hills, who's going to take all the women for wives, who's going to build all these palaces, who wants an army, he wants this, he wants that. He's going to bring disaster upon the country. He's going to turn his back on God. He's not going to care for the people. He's going to be awful. You don't want that. Just stay with the covenant. Love the God of Moses with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself, and God will look after you, keep you safe, and give you prosperity. And it says in the scriptures that throughout the lifetime of Gideon, there was peace and prosperity in the land. And that is the story of Gideon.